When Freedom Rings Hollow, a commentary written by George J. Bryjack, read by Terry. The renowned Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl, 1905 to 1997, argued that freedom is not the last word in values and the ordering of human societies. Frankl stated, freedom is only half the truth. The other half is responsibility. The just society will balance freedom and duty, liberty and responsibility. Without a commitment to responsibility, Frankl notes, freedom can easily degenerate into arbitrary and unreasoned behavior. The COVID-19 pandemic is the latest instance of many Americans exercising constitutional freedoms while taking no responsibility for the consequences of their actions. For example, in early May, when cases of the virus was increasing dramatically, a New Jersey gym opened in defiance of the state shutdown orders. The gym owner stated, "We're ready for whatever consequences come our way." No matter of the consequences of the opening and his responsibility for other patrons who could be infected with the virus while working out. In Texas, religious-based private schools are exempt from COVID-19 regulations, such as requiring masks, for example, as these rules are considered an unconstitutional assault on religious freedom. So much for government and religious responsibility to the larger community. Well, praise the Lord and pass the Clorox. Across the country, especially in conservative red states, many people refuse to wear face masks in public. A Florida man captured the essence of this resistance, stating, "Making individual decisions is the American way." What he failed to consider are the consequences of these decisions and the responsibility of those who make them. What about a decision to drink a six-pack of beer, then drive 100 miles per hour through a school zone? Hopefully, all but a handful of people would agree that making individual decisions does not include the right to engage in reckless, life-threatening behavior. And that's exactly what refusing to wear a mask in public can be, life-threatening. Dr. Jonathan Reiner, professor of medicine at George Washington University, stated that going out in public without a mask is like drunk driving. If you don't get hurt, you just might kill someone else. The lack of concern for the welfare of others during this pandemic is equally evident among Americans in their late teens to mid-30s who have gathered on beaches and bars and parties without social distancing and wearing masks. When asked why they ignore these simple but effective health safety measures, the typical response is, "I'm not going to catch the virus, and if I do, I'm healthy enough to survive." The realization that if infected, they could pass the deadly disease to others appear beyond their reasoning capacity. Another explanation is even more troubling, and that is, young people simply don't give a damn if they infect others. It's not their problem. Freedom good, responsibility bad. The "it's my right to choose" devoid of responsibility position is widespread, starting with a president who refused to wear a face mask in public until mid-July, and stated adamantly in March that he took no responsibility for the spread of the virus. We've had governors who gambled by reopening their states for business prematurely, thus triggering a dramatic increase in the number of coronavirus cases. And finally, law enforcement officers who simply refuse to enforce quarantine and mask-wearing directives. The Marshall Project, an online journalism organization focusing on issues relating to criminal justice in the United States, reported that at least 60 sheriffs in more than a dozen states have refused to enforce COVID-19 related directives. Regarding a face mask order by Washington State Governor Jay Inslee, a sheriff told a crowd, "Don't be a sheep." Now, his meaning was quite clear. Wearing the mask was a personal decision, and you are not responsible for the consequences of that decision. This position makes a further mockery of the "we're all in this together" sentiment. It's also highly insulting and potentially life-threatening to everyone in the health system who will have to care for those needlessly infected by the "it's not my responsibility" crowd. The supreme emphasis on freedom and neglect of responsibility is all but hardwired into the institutions and norms that define our society. Currently, 28 countries have compulsory military service, and 4 of those require women to serve. Because the United States is not one of them, when it comes to fighting and dying for freedom, the responsibility falls predominantly on the lower classes. According to one estimate, during the Vietnam War, this country's military forces were comprised overwhelmingly of the poor, 25%, the working class, 55%, and middle class, 20%, men and women. Very few troops, especially in combat units, came from the upper classes. The United States also lacks compulsory non-military service. Former Marine Corps Commandant Charles Krulak recently proposed a mandatory 2-year paid national service program. Krulak suggests this non-military program, administered by the states, might include assistance for the homeless and military veterans, mentoring students in poorly performing schools, regional forces to improve responses to natural disasters, and so forth and so on. This perspective is grounded in the belief that every citizen has a duty responsibility to make the country better for all Americans. The most egregious and damaging aspect of an all freedom, no responsibility ethos and practice is the creation of a post-World War II American economy with one of the most unequal distributions of income and wealth in the industrial world. Corporate America has outsourced well-paying jobs for decades while paying their employees in this country minimal salaries and slashing benefits. As the likes of Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the world with a net worth of $172 billion, and Bill Gates grow ever more wealthy, Forbes magazine reports that 57 million American workers are part of the gig economy, temporary and freelance contract workers rather than full-time employees. It's hardly surprising that low-wage gig workers who can't work from home have an especially high risk of contracting the virus. No one doubts that individuals such as Bezos and Gates are highly intelligent, and the enormous success they have realized is, in large measure, a product of their own hard work and business acumen. What is overlooked, however, are the opportunities, the freedoms this country provides that allowed their talents to be fully expressed and turned into enormous wealth. But what now of responsibility, especially during this pandemic, on the part of the approximately 640 billionaires in this country? According to an analysis of Forbes data by Americans for Tax Fairness, the net worth of American billionaires increased from just under $3 trillion to just over $3.5 trillion between March 18th and June 17th of this year. This intense desire for freedom, although not for slaves, Native Americans, and to a lesser extent women, was the driving force that created this nation. It would be a tragic irony if the overindulgence of freedom at the expense of responsibility will one day destroy this country. In 1946, Franco recommended the Statue of Liberty on the East Coast be supplemented by a Statue of Responsibility on the West Coast. The construction of the statue and the adherence to its message is long overdue. You've been listening to When Freedom Rings Hollow, one of many commentaries written by George J. Bryjack. If you've enjoyed this reading, you won't want to miss the next Bryjack commentary, Trumped Up History.